me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can.
Hey, guess what? We're still in Hebrews. Hebrews. We're going to do communion today. If you didn't get one of these yet, we'll give you an opportunity to pass those out after I share a few words for the message part, if I even can get words out of my mouth. We'll see how that goes. Hebrews chapter somewhere, 12. What verses you want to do today? Should we vote? Let's go. 18? Just 18. All right, well, that's not what's going to happen. 18 through the rest of the chapter on chapter 12. This seems to be a part that the author spent quite a bit of time creating. It's got a poetic flow to it. He does. I'm impressed again and again of this author, who we don't know who actually wrote this book, but there's so many. He was picked on years ago, thinking he's not that good, and people just didn't realize how he weaved things and how they didn't. What they really didn't understand is he was writing kind of more like you would preach. And so often you'll see when someone's doing public speaking, they'll do a certain kind of cadence for a while. And then they'll jump off and do something else to keep people engaged. And then they'll go back to what they did before. And he kind of goes all over the place, but it's with purpose and plan. We saw where he worked up for quite some time how Jesus is better and better and better, better than this and better than that, better than the tabernacle, better than Moses, better than Abraham, better than the prophets, better sacrifice. And we're getting close to the wrap up, and this is and he's done a few of these kind of changes of pace as we gotten close to the end. He did the long list of the people in the hall of faith, and then remember that when he got towards the end of that, he just there's like 8 more names I need to mention. I don't even have time to say anything about them. And now he gets into this. Let me read through this. Let me tell you a couple stories, and then make some final comments as we transition into communion. But I want to try to read through most of this without making many comments, which sometimes I struggle to do. Don't look at me like that, Patty. I need encouraging look from you. Thank you. Thank you. So, Hebrews chapter 12, starting in verse 18. For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and tempest, and the sound of the trumpet and a voice of whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. Okay, here's my one little jump, just so you get it. Right now, he's talking about the old covenant found at Sinai, Mount Sinai. And all these are illustrations of how they thought about it. They didn't want to hear from God because God scared them. So we'll get this in a minute. So they said, they're happy to let Moses go do it. Moses, their great leader, we'll find out in just a moment, was also terrified. So this is what you're supposed to have pictured. If you were part of the ancient world and you were Jewish, you would have known this already. There's your little clue in. No further messages be spoken of, for they could not endure the orders that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject him who warns us from heaven. At that time his voice shook the earth. But now he has promised, yet once more, I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken, that is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire. May the Lord add a blessing and understanding to his word. So this is this picture. If you haven't got it so far, this writer of Hebrews has been telling you all along in every way conceivable that, yeah, there was something good about the old covenant, the covenant at Sinai, but the covenant that comes through Jesus is immeasurably better. It's not just incrementally better, it's immeasurably better. It is impossible to be improved upon. It's the best. So, how do we picture this, and what is he trying to draw up? Because he's dealing with people who are in the midst of it, it's going to get worse, who are being persecuted because of their faith in Jesus. He's dealing with people who are going to be tempted to go back to Mount Sinai. Because life was easier. So they thought. It's easy to lose sight of what the reality is after it's passed by several hundred years, isn't it? I mean, everything that I've experienced several hundred years ago, my memory's a little faded on. And so they start to have these ideas. Wouldn't it be nice to just know what system, what I need to do, A, B, C, and D? And can't we just send our religious leaders up to do the work for us in the tabernacle? You let them have the rope tied to their foot in case they die and yank them out. That's for someone else. Life was easier then, so they would think, as the persecution raised. But our author here wants to remind them, you're thinking in very temporary terms. See, Mount Sinai is more based in creation. Mount Zion that Jesus established is based in the unshakable nature of God. It cannot be taken away. It cannot be burned up. This whole idea of God at the end, where God is a consuming fire, it has the idea of judgment. It also has the idea of things that are designed to be temporary will be temporary, and they can be burnt. And the things that I think it's good to create kind of a picture for this. So what I want to do is take you back to a previous era in my life. I was about 23 years old. I was newly married. My father-in-law was a resident of Puerto Rico. He grew up there and moved back there after he divorced. And so we were making our first trip to see him. Luciano was his name. We got into the airport in San Juan. He took us over to a house that was another one of his ex-wives' houses. That's a story for another time. And had me climb up a mango tree. I never even knew what a mango was at that point. So I climbed up the mango tree, and he wanted me to throw some down at him. I got him up on top of the roof, and I'm chucking them down at him, and he's trying to catch them, and I hit him in the head. So we developed nicknames for each other. He called me Handsome Monkey. I called him Mango Head. That lasted for as long as we knew each other. He was fairly wealthy and liked people to know he had money he could waste. As a 23-year-old, that was quite a lot of fun. He'd never met me before. He's going to try to impress me. And so we go to this hotel resort, and it's got a current pumped through the pool, and it's this river, and there's a place you can get off in this cave and go in the hot tub. At the end of it, there's this volleyball court in the pool. I did so well at volleyball that I won a free ride on this aqua cycle for out in the ocean. It was all sorts of, and I ate food I've never eaten before, and I also learned out I was pretty good at dominoes. Dominoes was a common game, and so there was all sorts of new and fresh and positive experiences. But the one that sticks out to me the most is we went to a more remote place towards the end of our stay there. And it was these condos on a beach. Translated, this area was called Palms by the Sea, and it was named perfectly. I remember sliding glass doors, going out into the ocean, and walking out in the ocean and picking up sand dollars. You could get them by the hundreds. It was just amazing. And the water was crystal clear. And whenever I came in, Luciano's sister somehow took an interest in me, and she couldn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish, but for some reason she liked me. I did feel, I know later on why she liked me, because if she stuck around me, her siblings that liked to mess with her in the water because she was afraid of the water wouldn't mess with her. But she also knew I liked cafe con leche. So whenever I came in from the ocean, she had this some of the most amazing coffee I've had in my life. And so it was beautiful beach. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. You guys need to picture this, because this is just... One time, rented the horses and rode on the beach. Picture my hair flowing through the wind. I had hair back then, stop it. It was not nice. That laugh was not nice. It was amazing. This really doesn't fit into the story, but it's fun to tell anyhow. One of the traditions there was you'd go visit and try to visit about everyone you saw the whole time you were there. We were there maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. And before they took you to the airport, it's kind of custom and a tradition. And about all they knew about me was he likes cafe con leche. So coffee with cream, and it had sugar in it, and it was amazing. But after 6 stops of this very, very potent coffee, and I got on the airplane, I thought I was having a heart attack. At 23 years old, I thought my life was over. I'm sweating, I feel it pounding. I never had that much caffeine in my life. But anyhow, that's not important. The important thing is flew back from that wonderful, beautiful place, that pristine beach. I love water. I like being out by the water. And got back to the beautiful setting of Des Moines, Iowa. Now, that's where I lived. I was serving a church there, and a wonderful church. And I hadn't been there very long, so I hadn't participated in all their regular activities. But they typically had a picnic out at Saylorville Lake. Get off the plane, barely enough time to go home, change clothes, whatever, and make it out to this. It was kind of a Sunday school picnic, but it was for the whole church, and it was a cookout. And they said the kids and younger adults, they love to go swimming in the water there, and it'll be a fun day of activities. I get to Saylorville Lake. I'm trying to enjoy this time with my church family. I look at the water that they're playing in, and it's disgusting. I can't even, if a 2-year-old was standing up in the water, I don't think I could even see their feet. You know, it's just not what I had experienced. And I spent the whole time there really trying to go, am I really back here? Where's the pristine water? Where's the sand dollars? Where's the amazing coffee? And I think that's the kind of picture this text is trying to paint. Saylorville wasn't bad. A lot of people went there. They still go there today. In fact, I water skied in that lake eventually, and that was a cool experience, but it was nothing. There's no comparison to Palms by the Sea and Saylorville Lake. You might have some good memories, some good experiences of that, but What the author is trying to say is that this new covenant, this Zion, this what Jesus has done for you is so much better. You may even, after I was gone from there for a period of time, I started to question, did I ever even experience something of that great beauty? And sometimes as we walk the drudgery of everyday life, we begin to become cloudy on the beauty and the wonder of the new covenant we have through Jesus Christ. And he's trying to remind them that because things are going to get rough. They're rough. They're going to get rougher. And we want to remind you that, those things that you want to go back to on Mount Sinai, they're all going to be burned up and gone. They were not going to last. I want you to attach yourself to something of much greater beauty. In fact, it'll be so beautiful you will have a hard time believing it at times that it's really real. And that's the picture he's trying to create. It's that kind of a picture he's trying to cast in their mind to help them be fortified in the days ahead. See, he goes, remember, even in that old time, the people like you, they didn't even want to hear from God because that was too fearful. They sent Moses up, and Moses said it was terrifying. And guess what? You get to be invited into the Holy of Holies and in the presence of God. Not just once a year, but 24/7, 365. And he starts building up this compare contrast. In both cases, God's presence is awesome, is awe-inspiring, deserves reverence. But in one, we get a VIP pass to experience it, and we don't have to be afraid. And the other one, you better be afraid. In both ones, we realize we don't deserve to go into the Holy of Holies. But in one, God's Son says, hey, this is my buddy. Come meet my dad. It's a very different picture. And that is what this text is trying to communicate. Let me share a few more things before we go and celebrate communion. Communion seems very significant as we celebrate the covenant at Mount Zion. The one that's based in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So he does all this stuff, and he makes these compare contrasts, and there's all sorts of things we could take time to pick out. But sometimes I think picking out things tears it apart. This is meant to be a section kept together, and that's why I try to do this storytelling piece of it. But there's this last part. Once you get the story, he adds in a couple shots he wants you to remember. We know that because in verse 28, he says, therefore. I've done all this. I've explained all this. I've told you this story. I've compared Mount Sinai with Mount Zion, and here's some practical things you can do with it. He's not saying this is all that you can do with it, but here's some practical things. Let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. You need to realize that in the ancient world, kingdoms were shaken up all the time. You need to realize that the Jewish people who were looking for a Messiah, they first thought, let's just reestablish God's nation and take over the world. Let's get back to where we're supposed to be. And the author here says, that's not part of the plan. If it could have been done by military and political might and power, it would have already been accomplished. Jesus would not have been needed. I want you to attach yourself not to something that is bound to this earth, but a kingdom that's unshakable. Be grateful for that no matter who's ever ruling, whether it's the Roman Empire or the Babylonian Empire or any empire, they can't take this kingdom from you. Because its roots are not in this world, its roots are in the Creator of the universe that existed before the world was created and will exist forever and ever. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus, let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire. Let's play around with some theological words here for a moment. If you get into theological discussions, they'll talk about the transcendence and the immanence of God. Do I need to go any farther? You got this. You're good? Time to go home? Transcendence of God is God's otherness, how God is not like us. Even though we're created in the image of God, there's certain things that cannot be duplicated in God's holiness, God's existence before there was time, and the list goes on. The transcendence of God. But then we also talk about the immanence of God. And this is a God that can relate to us, that can be close to us. Scripture sometimes, and Jesus uses this terminology frequently, but we even see it applied to God in some of the characters of the Old Testament, Abraham in particular, where God is referred to as a friend. What the author is saying here is that your worship needs to be able to maintain both God as holy, other, all, and respectful, and a God who's approachable, a God who is friend. If you hear when I pray quite often, I often say Lord and friend, because it holds both of those in tension. Whenever we get one of those out of balance, we become off kilter. Because if we go too much to only emphasizing the holiness side, and you can't overemphasize the holiness, but you got to bring in the immanence. You got to bring in the friend. If you do too much of that, we're back at Mount Sinai. And we're just trying to keep the rules so we don't get in bigger trouble. And if we overemphasize God as our pal and buddy, then there's nothing required of us. That God's transformation power, God's brightness, God's light, God's goodness can't penetrate us if it's just a buddy. And so the author said, when you worship God, if we use some of the other language in Hebrews, approach the throne of grace with confidence. That's the friend part. That's the part that says, I know God wants me to hang out with him, but also keep the awe and reverence in place. You can actually do a study of Christian music throughout different sectors of time, and you'll find that they tend to swing and they tend to push one over the other. And sometimes it's a balance that needs to take place, but the best music to me is the one that finds how to balance it in one song. the one that balances the Lord and the friend. It ends up in verse 29 with a pretty short phrase, for our God is a consuming fire. If God is not imminent, is not your friend, this should scare you. If you haven't banked on what Jesus did for you on the cross, this should scare you. If you do bank on what Jesus did for you, that you've embraced Jesus as your risen Lord and Savior, that you've surrendered your life to Him, that you realize your access to the Father is because you and Jesus are friends,